Hi, Algebra 2. I'm going to do some select homework problems from 11.1. Um, First of all, the law of sines is something you learned in geometry. The basic law of sines is if you have a triangle that's not a right triangle, because remember, a right triangle you can use sine, cosine, and tangent to find missing parts. If it is not a right triangle, you can use the law of sines and the law of cosines. So the law of sines is simply ratios of the angles, the sine of the area to the sides. So if you draw a triangle, you should always draw a triangle. I don't want to see on your paper just answers because I want to see how you're drawing it. I want to see how you're setting it up. So if you write this, angles are always the capital letters and the side across would be the small letter. So angle A, side A. All right. So the ratio of the law of sines is side A over the sine of A equals side B over the sine of B, side C over the sine of C. And you'll use them two at a time to solve them. You will just cross multiply and solve. So to use the law of sines, you have to have what I call an angle side pair. In other words, you have to have an angle and a side across to be able to write one of these proportions. Now, if they give you two angles and they want the side across from the third angle, all you have to do is find that third angle by subtracting these two from 180 because they add up to 180. Once you found that angle, then you have an angle side pair. So if they give you a side, an angle, and a side, you can use the law of sines. Or if they give you two angles and a side, you can use the law of sines. So when they ask you angle, angle, side, or side, angle, side, that's what they mean. Side, angle, side, if that's what they give you, or angle, angle, side, you can do that. Now with the law of sines, when you have a situation of side, angle, side, it has two solutions because if you have this angle and these two sides, this could be obtuse or acute, and that affects the length of that third side. So you kind of have to do a little bit more work on those to get your two answers. If when you're doing the law of sines and you cross multiply and you end up with the sine of b equals 1.2, then there's no solutions because there are no sines greater than 1. If you remember your trigonometric functions, the range is from -1 to 1, okay? So that's just some information. Now I'm going to start with number 2, which asks about the area. Well, when you have this, the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. But notice you aren't given the height, but you're given these three sides and it's not a right triangle, and you're given an angle. So all you have to do is draw in a height, and if you notice the side opposite of 20 is the height. So opposite, and then that forms, this 18.5 forms the hypotenuse. So the sine of 20 equals height over that. And they have formulated this into a simple equation, which is the area of a triangle when you've got an angle and your sides is 1/2 the two sides that are not across from the angle to multiply together times the sine of that angle. So when we do this, the area is 1/2. Well, what are the two sides that aren't across from 20? It's 18.5 times 25 times the sine of 20. So let's go ahead and put that in our calculator. And make sure your calculator is set on degrees. So 79.1. So the area is 79.1 square feet or square, whatever they gave it in, okay? All right, let's take a look at this question. It wants to know what side C is. So this is a good example of using the law of sines because they give us two angles and a side. So we can find a pair. Notice they don't give us B, so we have to find B. So you have to do 180 minus 35 plus 27. So let's go ahead and do that. 180 minus 35. And you get 118. So this is 118 degrees. So now we can just say 15 over the sine of 118 equals C over the sine of 27. We cross multiply and we have 15 times the sine of 27 equals C times the sine of 118. So we can just divide both sides by the sine of 118. You say, well, why don't you find the sine and plug the number in? Well, you can, once you get it all on one side, you can just punch it all in your calculator at the same time and save time. So C is going to equal what we get when we take 15 times the sine of 27 and then divide it by the sine of 118. And it's 7.7. So C equals 7.7.